So very good afternoon. We are going to start with the bones of skull. First is the orbit. The bony orbits, they are the pyramidal cavities present on either side of the root of nose. Each orbit has a base. Base is anteriorly and apex. Apex is lying posteriorly. What are the bony boundaries of the orbit? It has roof. It has its floor, medial wall, and lateral wall. These are the pyramidal sockets having base anteriorly and apex posteriorly. Toward the apex, you have three openings. Circular opening is optic canal. A comma-shaped opening is your superior orbital fissure. Inferiorly same elongated is the inferior orbital fissure. Superior orbital, inferior orbital, and optic canal. Now bones which are forming the boundaries of the bony orbit. Roof. Roof, it is formed by the orbital plate of frontal bone anteriorly and posteriorly by the lesser wing of sphenoid. Medial wall, it is formed by the lacrimal bone. Next to lacrimal is orbital plate of ethmoid bone. Next to ethmoid is your sphenoid bone. Medial wall is done. Within the medial wall, you have a circular opening, that is your optic canal. Now floor. Floor medial is formed by the orbital surface of maxillary bone, laterally by the orbital surface of zygomatic bone. Both the bones, zygomatic and maxilla, they are contributing in the floor. Coming to the lateral wall it is formed by the lower half of the lateral wall, it is formed by the orbital surface of the zygomatic bone, and upper part of the lateral wall, it is formed by the zygomatic process of frontal bone. So these are the bony boundaries of the orbit. Near the base, it has margins. This is supraorbital margin. This is medial margin. This is inferior margin. And this is lateral margin. Over the superior margin, there is one notch, supraorbital notch. This notch, it is later converted into foramina, through which passes the supraorbital nerves and vessels. Similarly, at the lower margin, there is infraorbital foramina, through which comes the infraorbital nerve. Now this is another diagram showing the bony surfaces. Now this is medial wall of the orbit. This is roof of the orbit, floor formed by the maxillary bone and zygomatic bone, and this is lateral wall. Now this is your sphenoid bone. This is comma-shaped superior orbital fissure. This is circular optic canal, and this is inferior orbital fissure. Very important is the optic canal is a circular opening which transmits the optic nerve along with the ophthalmic artery. Then this comma-shaped superior orbital fissure, it is divided by a common tendinous ring, a ring from where all the recti take their origin, divides the superior orbital fissure into three parts. This is medial part, intermediate, and lateral part. Very important is through the intermediate part, passes the two divisions of oculomotor nerve along with abducens nerve and nasociliary nerve. Through its lateral part, passes the superior ophthalmic vein along with the lacrimal nerve, frontal nerve, trochlear nerve. Mnemonic is LFT, lacrimal, frontal, trochlear nerve, the superior ophthalmic vein. Along with that, you have recurrent meningeal branch of ophthalmic artery. One artery, one vein, and over the medial surface, there is one single opening, that is inferior ophthalmic vein. So this is common tendinous ring of Zinn from where all the recti oculomotor muscles take their origin. And this is optic canal circular opening. Next bone we are going to discuss is mandible. A mandible is first bone to develop. It begins by the 4th week of intrauterine life. Mandible, it begins or it develops in two halves. The both halves, they fuse at the midline. Symphysis menti. Now each half of the mandible has a body and ramus. This is ramus. This is body. Body has upper border, or alveolar border. This is lower border or base, and this is outer surface, and this is inner surface of body. Now, talking about the ramus. Ramus is a quadrilateral plate having 4 borders and 2 surfaces. This is anterior border. This is superior border. This is posterior border. This is inferior border of the ramus. Now, ramus of mandible is a quadrilateral plate having 4 borders and 2 surfaces. This is lateral surface and this is medial surface of the mandible. It has 2 processes. Anteriorly triangular process. This triangular process is known as coronoid process, and posteriorly condylar process. This condylar process bears the head. Beneath the head it has a neck. Neck has a depression known as a pterygoid fovea. Then this condylar process, it continues with the posterior border. The superior border, it is also known as mesenteric notch, through which passes the mesenteric nerves and vessels. Now this is outer surface, which provides attachment to one very important muscle of mastication, that is your masseter. This is another diagram that ramus, when it articulates with the body, it forms an angle of mandible. This angle of mandible, it is obtuse in infants and in old age people, and it becomes acute in adults. Talking about its body has superior surface, outer surface and inner surface, upper border or alveolar border. Upper border, it bears the socket for the teeth. This is upper border, bear the socket for the teeth, and lower border, it forms a base of mandible. Outer surface in the midline, it has symphysis menti. Symphysis menti is a faint ridge where both right and left half of mandibles they unite. Then it has mental protuberance. This prominence, it is known as mental protuberance. Just between the superior and inferior border, there is one foramen known as mental foramen, through which comes the mental nerves and vessels. This is mental foramen. Next is oblique line. Continuation of the anterior border of the ramus. This is oblique line. It continues down towards the mental tubercle. Then inner surface, talking about the inner surface. Now this is inner surface of the body. In the inner surface, at the ramus, you have a foramen, that is the mandibular foramen. Just behind the mandibular foramen, there is faint line known as mylohyoid line, oblique line of mylohyoid. Now this mandibular foramen, it has a tongue-like projection which is covering this mandibular foramen, that is known as lingula. This lingula of the mandibular foramina, it provides attachment to sphenomandibular ligament, which is an accessory ligament to temporomandibular joint. Now this is inner surface of the mandible. This is alveolar margin. This is your half part of the mandible which fuses at symphysis menti. This is mandibular foramina. This is mandibular notch through passes the mesenteric nerves and vessel. This is ramus of mandible. This is angle of mandible. Now behind the median part of the symphysis menti, its posterior surface, it has 4 sets of the genial tubercles, 2 superior genial tubercle. Just behind this part you have 4 genial tubercles, 2 superior, 2 inferior. Superior genial tubercle provides attachment to genioglossus. Inferior genial tubercles provides attachment to geniohyoid muscle. Now this mandible bone, it is very important. It has various structures in its relation. Various muscles in relation to it is masseter. It is attached on the outer surface of the mandible and to the coronoid process, to the interior border and the tip of coronoid process, the triangular projection, there is attachment of temporalis muscle. Then the facial nerve and vessels, they wind around the base of mandible. Wind around the base of mandible. From the mental protuberance, there is origin of mentalis muscle, doubt muscle. Then this is inner surface. Inner surface, this is head of the mandible, that is condylar process. Beneath the head, there is a depression known as pterygoid fovea, which provides the attachment to lateral pterygoid muscle, which is another muscle of mastication. Then on the inner surface near the angle of mandible, there is attachment of medial pterygoid muscle. From the oblique line of mylohyoid, there is origin of mylohyoid muscle, which is forming the floor of mouth. This mylohyoid, right and left mylohyoids, they form the floor of mouth anteriorly. Posteriorly, it is formed by the hyoglossus. You have different structures. The neck of mandible, this part, it is related to auriculotemporal nerve and superficial temporal vessels. Now this is mandibular foramen. Through this mandibular foramen passes the inferior alveolar nerves and vessels. Behind the mandibular foramen, this mylohyoid line, it has mylohyoid groove through which passes the mylohyoid artery and nerve, which supplies the mylohyoid muscle. Now this alveolar border or upper border towards the inner surface, it is associated with next nerve, that is your lingual nerve. Lingual nerve is a nerve of the posterior division of the mandibular nerve. So here you have lingual nerve. Here you have auriculotemporal nerve, which supplies the secretomotor fibers to the parotid gland. Then inferior alveolar nerves and vessels. Through the mandibular notch, you have mesenteric nerves and vessels. Behind the mandibular foramen, this is mylohyoid line through which passes the artery and nerve to the mylohyoid. Next bone is maxillary bone. Maxillary bone, it is another second largest bone which arises from the first pharyngeal arch after the mandible. This maxillary bone, it has anterior surface. Anterior surface which contributes to the face, and anterior surface bears the notch medially. This is nasal notch. This is nasal notch. The anterior surface bears a nasal notch. Next is your alveolar border. Alveolar border bears the sockets for the teeth. Then the main feature for the side determination of maxilla is nasal notch lies medially, alveolar margin lies inferiorly, and medial surface of maxilla has one groove, that is hiatus, known as maxillary hiatus for maxillary air sinus. So this is medial surface of the maxillary bone. So maxillary bone, it has a body. This is body, and it has four processes. Frontal process of maxilla, which is projecting upward. Alveolar process of maxilla. Zygomatic process of maxilla. Towards the inferior surface, you have palatine process of maxilla. So it has four processes. I am repeating again: frontal process, alveolar process, zygomatic process, and towards the inner surface, palatine process. The common feature of this maxillary bone is that it is second bone after the mandible. It is second largest bone of the face, and it is second bone to appear after the mandible. It has four projections or processes. And what is the side determination of this maxilla? Maxillary bone, it forms a maximum part of your facial skeleton, that is your cheek area. Medially, it has nasal notch. It has alveolar process bearing the socket for the teeth, and its medial surface, it has a large opening or hiatus for the maxillary sinus. It is a salient feature. From this, you can identify the medial surface of the maxillary bone. Now, this is frontal process of maxilla. This is palatine process of maxilla. This is alveolar process of maxilla. Now posterior surface, this is anterior surface which contribute to the facial skeleton. This is lateral part which will articulate with the zygomatic bone. This is zygomatic process of maxilla. This is orbital surface which will contribute to the floor of the bony orbit. And this is maxillary process, maxillary body, main body of the maxilla. The posterior border is thickened to form a tuberosity known as maxillary tuberosity. This is posterior or infratemporal surface which will form the anterior wall of infratemporal fossa. So this is all about the maxilla. Next is the temporal bone. Temporal bone is the bone of the lateral side of the skull. Temporal bone, it is having a squamous part which forms the temporal surface. This is squamous part of the temporal bone. It forms a part of norma lateralis. It is situated at the sides of the skull. It has a projection, that is zygomatic process of the temporal bone. Then it has mastoid process. It has tympanic process, which has opening of external acoustic meatus, and it has styloid process. So it has plate-like squamous part, it is projecting upward. It has petrous part which is lying towards the inner surface. Petrous part of temporal bone. I'm repeating again the surfaces. So temporal bone has a squamous part which bears the temporal lines. These temporal lines are present on the lateral surface of the skull, from where it gives origin to the temporalis muscle. A fan-shaped muscle, which is a muscle of mastication. It is arising from the temporal surface, temporal fascia, and from the temporal lines. Then next is the zygomatic process, which is directed forward, strong zygomatic process. Then a petrous part, it is triangular, it is projecting or directed medially. Then external acoustic meatus, it is enclosed between the squamous part, this is squamous part, and tympanic part. Now this is outer surface of temporal bone. Towards the inner surface, it has inner surface of the temporal bone. Now this is opening of external acoustic meatus, which is bounded by the formed by the tympanic plate. Behind the opening of external acoustic meatus, you have a strong thick projection. This is mastoid process. This is mastoid process. In front of mastoid process, a long tapering projection. This is styloid process. This styloid process, it is known as veins of chariot as it provides attachment to 3 muscle and 2 ligaments. Styloglossus, stylopharyngeus, and stylohyoid muscle. 2 ligaments are stylomandibular ligament and stylohyoid ligament. So 5 structures are attached to this styloid process. The petrous part of the temporal bone is located inside. Now this is petrous part of temporal bone. So this is inner surface. This is zygomatic process. This is external acoustic meatus. In front of external acoustic meatus, this is mandibular fossa. Mandibular fossa provides a groove or provides a depression for articulation of temporomandibular joint. Just in front, it has an eminence known as articular eminence. This external acoustic meatus is formed by the tympanic plate. This is tympanic plate. Behind the external acoustic meatus, this is mastoid process. This is mastoid foramina and this is mastoid canal. This is styloid process. Between the styloid process and the mastoid process, this foramen, circular foramen, is stylomastoid foramina. Through this stylomastoid foramina comes your facial nerve. Now this is petrous part of temporal bone. Towards the posterior half, it has jugular fossa, carotid canal. And this petrous part near its apex, it has a depression, that is a depression for the trigeminal ganglion, that is for the trigeminal ganglion 5th nerve. And this is elevated area known as arcuate eminence, which is because of semicircular canals. So this marked area is showing the temporal bone. Next to temporal bone is the inner surface of skull. So this skull, inner surface of skull, it is divided into 3 fossas: anterior cranial fossa, middle cranial fossa, and posterior cranial fossa. Now this is anterior cranial fossa. Anterior cranial fossa, it is bounded anteriorly by orbital plate of frontal bone, this orbital part of the frontal bone. Posteriorly, it is limited by lesser wing of sphenoid. These are the lesser wing of sphenoids. Now this anterior cranial fossa, in the central, it has foramen cecum. Just behind the foramen cecum, it has tank-like projection known as crista galli. On either sides of crista galli, these are the fine perforations present within the cribriform plate of ethmoid. Through this cribriform plate of ethmoid passes your olfactory nerves and vessels. Now this is your anterior cranial fossa, this is your orbital plate of frontal bone. Posteriorly, this is your lesser wing of sphenoid. Now this is middle cranial fossa. Middle cranial fossa, it is bounded anteriorly by the lesser wing of sphenoid. Posteriorly, it is limited by the petrous part of temporal bone. Now this is petrous part of temporal bone. This petrous part of temporal bone and the lesser wing of sphenoid, this limits the boundaries of middle cranial fossa, and the wing of sphenoid, this wing of sphenoid is greater wing of sphenoid. Lesser wing is forming the margins. Sphenoid bone is butterfly shaped, having the body forming the central part, and these are the wings. This is lesser wing and this is greater wing of sphenoid. Now you have the foramina within the middle cranial fossa, foramen rotundum, foramen ovale, then foramen spinosum, then foramen lacerum or carotid canal. Now this is body of sphenoid. It has hypophyseal fossa or pituitary fossa for the pituitary gland. Then you have the opening of optic canal here only. Then this is posterior cranial fossa. Posterior cranial fossa, it is bounded anterolaterally by the petrous part of temporal bone, posteriorly by the occipital bone. This is occipital bone with transverse lips, transverse sulci. Now it has large foramen, foramen magnum. This is jugular foramina. Foramen magnum, in front you have anterior hypoglossal canal. Behind the condyle on the inferior surface you have condylar canals, posterior condylar canals. Now this is fossa for the cerebellum. Here lodges your cerebrum part, that is frontal lobe of cerebrum, rest over here, temporal lobe rest over here. This is fossa for the cerebellum. Here you have attachment of tentorium cerebelli, which is separating the cerebrum from the cerebellum. It is a fold of dura mater. Now this is another diagram representing the foraminas. Through the cribriform plate of ethmoid passes your olfactory nerve. Through the optic canal passes your ophthalmic artery and optic nerve. Then through foramen rotundum passes your maxillary nerve. Through ovale, mnemonic is male, mandibular nerve, accessory meningeal artery, lesser petrosal nerve, and emissary vein. Through foramen spinosum passes your middle meningeal artery and the trunk of mandibular nerve. Foramen lacerum, it transmits the carotid canal. Then you have jugular foramina, through which passes your 7th and 8th nerve. Then you have internal acoustic meatus for the 7th and 8th nerve. For the internal acoustic meatus transmits 7th and 8th nerve. Through the jugular foramina, you have 9th, 10th, and 11th nerve. Then you have foramen magnum, through which passes the medullary part of the spinal cord along with the meninges, along with the anterior spinal artery and posterior spinal artery. These are the neurovascular structures which exit and leave the skull. Now this is anterior cranial fossa. This is sphenoid bone, butterfly shaped. This is your temporal bone. This is your occipital bone. These are the various foramina through which the structures pass, enter, and leave the skull. So that's all about the skull. Starting with the next part. So next topic is development of face, nose and palate. So starting with the development of face. Development of face, it occurs between 5 to 8 weeks of intrauterine life. The lower jaw or a mandible. It is first to form during 4th week of intrauterine life. Rest of the facial proportions they develop during the fetal period, that is 9th week to the birth. During infancy and childhood, various bones, paranasal sinuses, facial skeleton keep on increasing in size and it contributes to the definitive shape of the face. Now this is embryo at 4 to 5 week of intrauterine life. This is lateral view. It is showing the pharyngeal arches. Now this is lens placard, which is your future eye. This is nasal placard. This is otic placard or auditory vesicle for the ear. And this is your stomatodium, which is future mouth. And this is the bulge for the cardiac prominence. Early in the 4th week, you will appreciate 5 primordial swellings surrounding the stomatodium. All the swellings, they consist of the neural crest, derived mesenchyme, 1 frontonasal swelling, 2 maxillary swellings, and 2 mandibular prominences or mandibular swellings. And this is your stomatodium, which is your future mouth. Now, single frontonasal process, it is ventral to the forebrain. The paired maxillary prominences, they are derived from the cranial part of the first pharyngeal arch, while mandibular prominences, they are derived from the caudal part of first pharyngeal arch. Next is stomatodium. Stomatodium is ectoderm line depression. This stomatodium, it is separated from the pharynx by a green colored this membrane. This is known as oropharyngeal or buccopharyngeal membrane. This stomatodium, it will form the vestibule of oral cavity, that is your future mouth. It is surrounded by these 5 swellings: frontonasal, 2 maxillary, and 2 mandibular swellings. Now, by the end of 4th week of intrauterine life, the oval-shaped swellings or oval depressions, they are seen on either sides of the frontonasal process. These are known as nasal placards. Nasal placards, they are present on each side of frontonasal prominence. These nasal placards, they will lead to the formation of nose and the nasal cavities. Later, these nasal placards, they are surrounded by a swellings known as medial nasal prominences and lateral nasal prominence. This is medial nasal prominence, this is lateral nasal prominence, this is frontonasal prominence. Later on, these placards, they will sink to form nasal pits. Now each lateral, this is lateral prominence. This lateral prominence, it is separated from this maxillary swelling by a groove, that is nasolacrimal groove, which is your future nasolacrimal duct. Nasolacrimal duct, it is draining the lacrimal gland and it opens in the inferior meatus of nose. So this is your nasolacrimal groove. Now this is another diagram. This is nasal pit surrounded by medial nasal swelling, lateral nasal swelling. This is frontonasal prominence. This is maxillary prominence. Now this is nasolacrimal groove, which is between the lateral nasal process and your maxillary prominence. Now this is your future mouth or stomatodium. Now as the maxillary prominences, they keep increasing in size, they will increase in size to form the cheeks and they will merge with the mandibular prominences. Medially, the medial nasal prominences, they will come closer towards the midline, and this frontonasal prominence, which was wider in earlier period, it becomes narrower. As it becomes narrower, these medial nasal prominences of the nose, that is nasal swellings, they will come closer. They will fuse to form upper lip. This upper part, they will fuse to form upper lip. So upper lip, it is formed by the two medial nasal prominences and two maxillary prominences. The eyes or the optic placoids, they were lying laterally. As the frontonasal process prominences, this area becomes narrower. Nasal pits come closer to each other, and eyes, they will come shifting to their original position. Coming to the next diagram. Now the medial nasal prominences, they grow medially, merge with each other, and they form intermaxillary segment. Now this is next diagram. Now this central part, root of the nose, central part, and philtrum. This is derived from the medial nasal prominence and frontonasal prominence. This lateral side, blue color, it is derived from the lateral nasal prominence, which will form the ala of nose. These are the nasal pits. They will open as external nares. Now the eyes or optic placoids, they were lying laterally. They comes to lie on either side of the root of nose. Now this is your mandibular prominence, which will be forming the cheek. It will fuse with the laterally with the mandibular prominences. Now this is your future mouth or stomatotium. This diagram represents the nasal pits, intermaxillary segment, medial nasal prominence, lateral nasal prominence, maxillary prominence, mandibular prominence. Now, as the nasal pits, they come closer, this area of the nose heap up, and this two nasal pits, they open externally as external nares. These ala of nose, they are formed by the lateral nasal prominence, these ala. Now, intermaxillary segment, it gave rise to the philtrum of the lip. Premaxillary part of the maxilla, that is anterior most part of the maxilla. Then next to that is your primitive plate, that is your hard palate, anterior 2/3 of the hard palate. Now mesenchyme from the first and second pair of pharyngeal arch, it will give rise to the muscles of mastication and muscles of facial expression. So first arch gave rise to the muscles of mastication. Second arch, it gave rise to the muscles of facial expression. Now derivatives of the facial components. Number first is frontonasal prominence. What will it form? Frontonasal prominence, it will form the forehead. It will form the frontal bone, nasal bone, and this bridge of nose. Next is maxillary prominence. This maxillary prominence will form the cheeks, upper part of lip, zygomatic bone, and it will contribute to the formation of the palate. Now mandibular prominence. This mandibular prominence will form the chin, lower lip, and lower cheeks. Now lateral nasal prominence, this part, it will form ala of nose. Medial nasal prominence, as they fuse with each other, they will form intermaxillary segment, which will form the central part of upper lip, that is your philtrum area, and premaxillary part of palate. So this is intermaxillary segment, that is your fused medial nasal prominences. Now next feature is development of palate. It is known as palatogenesis. It begins by the end of 5th week of intrauterine life, and it gets completed by the 12th week of intrauterine life. So we have primary palate and secondary palate. Now the primitive palate, it begins in 6th week of intrauterine life from the anterior part, from the intermaxillary segment as median palatine process, And behind that you have two lateral palatine processes arising from the maxillary bone. These are the shelf-like projections from the maxillary bone which will form the palate, anterior two-thirds of the hard palate. And pre-maxillary part, it is formed by the median palatine prominence. That is a part of the intermaxillary segment. This is nasal septum. Palate is separating the nose from the mouth, from the oral cavity. Now this is a palate. This is primitive palate, which is formed from the intermaxillary segment or medial palatine process. This is hard palate formed from the lateral palatine prominences or projections from the maxillary bone. And this is posterior one-third, which is formed from the palatine bones by its horizontal plates. I'm repeating again the hard palate. Primitive palate is this anterior most just behind the incisive fossa. It is formed from the median palatine prominence or intermaxillary segment. Then anterior two-thirds, it is formed by the lateral palatine prominences or projections from the maxillary bone. Posterior one-third of the hard palate, it is formed from the horizontal plates of the palatine bone. Now you have this is maxillary bone, part of maxillary bone. So this is intermaxillary suture. This is derived from the palatine bone. This is interpalatine suture. Now this is maxillary bone. This is palatine bone. So this is palatomaxillary suture. Now here a cross is formed. This is known as cruciform type of the sutures. Now this bony part get ossified. The unossified part of this palate, it appears or it forms the soft palate. Soft palate, it has 5 muscles and central depression which is hanging when mouth is wide open, that is your uvula, musculus uvulae. Now secondary palate, it is formed from the maxillary processes as lateral palatine processes. These lateral palatine processes, they come closer with each other and they fuse anteriorly with the median palatine process and they fuse with the nasal septum, separating or forming a partition between the nasal cavity and your oral cavity. Now in the beginning, the lateral palatine processes, they project inferomedially on the sides of tongue. They project inferomedially on the sides of tongue as soon as the jaw develops. As soon as the jaw develops, tongue moves more inferiorly, and these palatine processes, which were not very deep, they elongate and forms horizontal projections or a bar, which will separate the nasal septum or nasal cavity from the oral cavity. So this is fused lateral palatine prominences. Gradually, the lateral palatine prominences, they grow towards each other and fuse in the median plane. They fuse with the posterior part of the primitive palate as well as with the nasal septum. Now, fusion with nasal septum, it begins during 9th week and it is completed by the 12th week of intrauterine life. The bones develop in the interior part, they will form hard palate, and the posterior part, they remain unossified as a muscular part and it will form the soft palate. So this is hard palate, this is soft palate. This is pre-maxillary part of the hard palate. This is your frenulum of lip, that is your lower lip. Now this is the anterior two-thirds of the tongue. This is posterior one-third, and this is your soft palate, unossified part, which forms muscular soft palate. Now these are the changes in face during the fetal period. That is, nose is, earlier the nose was flat and mandible was underdeveloped. Then as the age advances, the mandible grows and nose becomes heaved up. Eyes were present laterally on each side. As the frontonasal prominence becomes narrower, eyes they come to shift medially. Ears were earlier at the lower position in relation to the mandible. As the lower jaw grows, and eyes move to their original position, the ears they goes upward at the level of eyes. So these are the changes in face. Earlier, the frontonasal prominence was wider apart, then it becomes narrower. As soon as the nose formation is formed, the cheeks get formed, the mandibular get at its original position, forming all the bony part. The ears they lie at the level of eyes. Earlier ear were as at the lower level at the level of mandible. Now an anomaly is related to the face, nose and palate. Very important is facial cleft. Facial cleft is failure of any prominence to fuse properly, whether in the area of lips, whether in the area of palate. So associated with the lips is cleft lip, with palate is cleft palate, with both cleft lip and cleft palate. And if there is region of nasolacrimal group, that leads to the formation of facial cleft. So this is median cleft lip. In median cleft lip is medial maxillary prominences. Sorry, medial nasal prominences of the nose. They fail to merge or they fail to form intermaxillary segment, which is the premaxillary part or which forms a philtrum or central part of upper lip. So this leads to the condition known as median cleft lip. It is failure of the median nasal prominence to merge, and there appears a gap in the median part. Second is unilateral cleft lip. Unilateral cleft lip is because of medial nasal prominence fails to merge with the maxillary prominence. On affected side, it can be unilateral or it can be bilateral on both the sides. Then oblique facial cleft. This is failure of maxillary prominence to fuse with lateral nasal prominence. There appears a gap. This is oblique facial cleft. Cleft palate, it is unilateral, it can be bilateral, or it can be associated with the cleft lip. Now this is condition in which cleft palate is associated with the cleft lip. Now this is normal view in which this is A part is normal view in which this is premaxillary part behind the incisive fossa, and this is your hard palate and this is your soft palate. Second is unilateral cleft lip. Next is unilateral cleft lip extending in jaw as well as in palate. Next condition is bilateral cleft lip, including the lips and jaw. Next is isolated cleft lip. When there is failure of the fusion of lateral palatine processes with each other, separating the nasal cavity from the oral cavity. Now, next condition is cleft palate associated with anterior cleft lip. It's unilateral cleft lip. These are the another conditions with median cleft lip, median cleft lower lip, when the two half of mandibular processes they fail to fuse. Bilateral oblique facial cleft on both the sides, that is lateral nasal prominences fails to fuse with the maxillary prominence. Macrostomia, widened mouth. Microstomia with single nostrils, when the nasal septum it fails to develop. Microstomia is small mouth, small opening of the mouth. Bifid nose, when the nasal septum, the two right and left nasal halves, they do not fuse with each other, there appears a gap along with the gap in the upper lip, leading to the median cleft upper lip and bifid nose. So that's all for the development of face, starting with the next part. So starting with the pharyngeal arches. So we have 6 pharyngeal arches. This is the lens placard. This is aortic placard. This is your cardiac prominence or bulge for the heart development. These are the pharyngeal arches which develops in the floor of mouth. So these are the pharyngeal prominences. These are the 5 mesenchymal swellings around the future mouth or stomatodium we have discussed just now. Now each arch has its own cartilage, has its own blood supply and its own nerve supply. So we have 6 pharyngeal arch, out of which 5th is rudimentary. 5th gives only one ultimobranchial body. Rest, every arch has its own cartilage. From that cartilage, it gives rise to the bony part. It has its own nerve supplying that particular area and it has own its blood supply. Now these are the pharyngeal arches. Each pharyngeal arch, it has ectodermal thickenings and endodermal thickenings. Ectodermal lining, it will give rise to the ectodermal clefts. The depressions, it will give rise to the ectodermal clefts. Endodermal thickenings, they will form endodermal pouches. So please remember the ectodermal thickenings gives clefts. Endodermal thickenings, they will form the pouches. So this is first arch, second arch, third arch, fourth arch. This is your sixth arch. Now, this is ectoderm, blue color, and this is yellow color is your endoderm, and this is your mesoderm, mesenchyme in the all the arches. So this is blood supply, which is arising from the dorsal aorta, running behind, giving blood vessels to all the pouches and to all the pharyngeal arches. So we are going to start with the nerve supply of the pharyngeal arches. Each arch is supplied by the cranial nerve. So first arch, that is your mandibular, supplied by the mandibular branch of the trigeminal nerve. It has its pre-traumatic nerve, that is chorda tympani branch of the facial nerve. Second arch has only one, that is your facial nerve. Third arch has its nerve, that is your glossopharyngeal nerve. Fourth arch has its nerve, that is your superior laryngeal branch of vagus nerve. And sixth arch, it is supplied by the recurrent laryngeal branch of vagus nerve. First arch is mandibular nerve, second facial, third glossopharyngeal, fourth superior laryngeal, sixth recurrent laryngeal. So fourth and sixth, they are supplied by the branches of vagus nerve. Now this is another same diagram with ectodermal clefts. These are the clefts and endodermal pouches. You have various structures arising from the cleft and pouches. So come to this diagram. So from first ectodermal cleft, it gives origin to the external acoustic meatus. Now ectoderm of second, third and fourth pouches, second and third, mainly second and third overgrows and they enclose a gap. This gap is known as sinus, branchial sinus, or later if it predominates or if it is present, it leads to the branchial cyst or swellings in the anterior midline of neck. So first pharyngeal arch, it will form the cleft, will form the ectodermal thickenings. We are talking of just ectodermal thickenings. First ectodermal thickening will give rise to the external acoustic meatus. Second and third ectodermal thickenings, they will overgrow and they will enclose a space between the fourth arch, fourth cleft to this space, enclosing space, it will form the cervical sinus. If it persists, it forms a branchial cyst or cervical cyst within the neck region. Coming to the pharyngeal pouches, these are the pouches. So first pouch, it will form a part of auditory tube and tympanic plate, that is your primitive tympanic cavity. From the second pouch, it gives origin to the palatine tonsil. Third pouch, it gave rise to the inferior parathyroid gland. Along with that, it gives origin to the thymus. Fourth pouch, it will form the superior parathyroid gland. Fifth pouch, it forms the ultimobranchial body, which gives rise to the parafollicular cells, which will secrete the calcitonin. Now, sixth arch, it will form the cartilages of larynx. So I'm repeating again. So from the first endodermal pouch, it will form the primitive tympanic cavity with the auditory tube. From the second pouch, it will form the palatine tonsil. From the third pouch, it will form the inferior parathyroid gland and thymus. From the fourth, it will form the superior parathyroid, and ultimobranchial body is derived from the fifth arch, which will form the parafollicular cells secreting calcitonin. And the sixth arch, it will form the cartilages of larynx. Now this is another diagram that is cartilaginous part of the, we will concentrate over this diagram. Cartilaginous part of all the arches. So this is first arch. The first arch is cartilage of first arch is known as Merkel's cartilage. So this Merkel cartilage, it forms the mandible, malleus, incus. So first arch, bony or cartilaginous part of the first arch, it is Merkel's cartilage, which will help in formation of the mandible, lower jaw, the first bone to form, malleus, incus. Coming to the second arch. Second arch is known as Richard's arch. It forms stapes. As for stapes, remember the mnemonic 5S. Stapes, styloid process, stylohyoid ligament, smaller or lesser cornua of hyoid bone, or superior surface of hyoid bone. I am repeating again. Second arch, cartilages of second arch, remember mnemonic 5S, stapes, as for styloid process. Next S is for the stylohyoid ligament. Next S is for smaller or lesser cornua of the hyoid bone. Next is superior surface of body of hyoid bone. Coming to the third arch. Third arch will form the lower part of the body of hyoid bone and remaining greater cornua of hyoid bone. Fourth and sixth arch will form the cartilages of larynx. So first arch has its nerve mandibular nerve. Second arch has its nerve facial nerve. Third arch has its nerve glossopharyngeal nerve. Fourth arch has superior laryngeal branch of the vagus nerve. Sixth arch has recurrent laryngeal branch of vagus nerve. So these are the cartilages or bony part derived from all the arches. Now this is very important tabulated form diagram. So first arch is mandibular arch, which include the maxillary process. Now for the mandibular arch is mandibular nerve and its pre-traumatic branch is chorda tympani, branch of facial nerve. So for this, remember the mnemonic 2M, muscles of mastication and mylohyoid. 2T, tensor tympani and tensor villi palatini, and 1 anterior belly of digastric. So I am repeating again, mnemonic for this is M for mandibular, 2M. 1M is for the muscles of mastication, second M is for mylohyoid muscle. 2T, tensor villi palatini, tensor tympani, and 1 anterior belly of digastric. Now what skeletal elements they will be formed from this mandibular arch? Premaxilla, maxilla, zygomatic bone, temporal bone, Merkel's cartilage, which will be forming mandible, malleus, incus. Along with that, it will be forming two ligaments, anterior ligament of malleus and sphenomandibular ligament, which is another accessory ligament to temporomandibular joint. Second arch is hyoid arch. Second arch has its nerve, that is facial nerve, which has its pretraumatic branches, tympanic branch of glossopharyngeal nerve. Second arch will be supplying, remember, 2F, 2P. 2F, one is facial muscle, second is fronto-occipitalis. 2P is platysma and posterior belly of digastric. 2S, stylohyoid stapedius. I am repeating again for the hyoid arch. 2F, facial muscles, fronto-occipitalis. 2P, platysma, posterior belly of digastric. 2S, stylohyoid stapedius. Then buccinator muscle, along with that auricular muscles. So skeletal muscles, remember 5S, skeletal components. Stapes, styloid process, stylohyoid ligament, lesser or smaller cornua, superior part of the body of hyoid bone. Third arch. Nerve of third arch is glossopharyngeal nerve. Remember, one very important part is that only muscle which is supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve is stylopharyngeus. So only muscle is stylopharyngeus. Remaining part of hyoid bone, that is greater cornua and lower part of hyoid bone, they are derived from third arch. Next is your fourth arch, which is supplied by the superior laryngeal branch of vagus nerve. It will be supplying the cricothyroid muscle, only muscle which is supplied by the superior laryngeal branch of vagus, and it will be forming thyroid, arytenoid, cuneiform, and corniculate cartilages. And last is sixth arch, which is supplied by a recurrent branch of the vagus nerve. It will be supplying remaining all intrinsic muscles of larynx except cricothyroid. And the cartilage derived from sixth arch is cricoid cartilage. So this is malleus. This is spine of sphenoid, sphenomandibular ligament. So this is another diagram of the ectodermal cleft and endodermal pouches. This is same another diagram. Earlier the inferior parathyroid, it is arising from the third arch, and superior is arising from the fourth arch. As soon as from the foramen cecum, thyroid diverticulum develops, which encloses two right and left lobe. As soon as thyroid gland develops, it comes to lie to its original position. So along with the thyroid gland, the inferior thyroid will run down and superior thyroid will occupy the superior part on the posterior border, and inferior lies inferiorly with the development of thyroid gland. Earlier, this inferior parathyroid, it is arising from the third arch, which is lying superiorly in embryological life. As soon as the thyroid gland develops, this inferior parathyroid gland and superior, both they are lying on the posterior surface of thyroid gland. So they will come to live to their original position with the development of thyroid gland. So pharyngeal pouches. From the first pouch, it forms a tubotympanic recess, middle ear cavity, auditory tube, tympanic membrane. From the second, palatine tonsil. From the third, inferior parathyroid gland with the thymus. From the fourth arch, it will be forming superior parathyroid gland. And from the fifth arch, it will form ultimobranchial body, which will be leading to the formation of parafollicular cells of the thyroid gland secreting calcitonin. These are the conditions. Tracker-Collins syndrome, it is mandibulofacial dystosis, failure of the development of the mandibular and facial prominences. Second is Robin sequence, that is smaller lower jaw. Then DiGeorge anomaly, it is the condition, it is chromosomal abnormality, which is because of deletion of the 30 to 40 genes in chromosome 22. This is another conditions. So that's all about the pharyngeal arches, starting with the next topic. So for the development of tongue, so this we have all studied. So for the development of tongue. So these are the two lingual swellings which are arising from the first arch. Just behind the lingual swelling, we have a median swelling, the tuberculum impar. Behind the tuberculum impar, you have foramen caecum. This is pre-sulcal part or anterior oral part of the tongue. Then posteriorly, you have this hypobronchial eminence in relation to third and fourth arch. This is cranial part of hypobronchial eminence. This is caudal part of hypobronchial eminence. So anterior two-third of the tongue, it is formed from the two lateral lingual swellings and tuberculum impar. Posterior, it is formed from the cranial part, that is cupula of hypobronchial eminence, and posterior most part is formed from the hypobronchial eminence. So that's why this is pre-sulcal part. This is sulcus terminalis. So this is post-sulcal or pharyngeal part. This is oral part. This is pharyngeal part. This is root of tongue, which is attached to the epiglottis by the folds, by median glossoepiglottic fold and lateral glossoepiglottic fold. So that's all about the tongue. So it has two median swellings known as lingual swellings or lateral lingual swellings. Just behind, you have a single swelling tuberculum impar. Just behind the tuberculum impar, you have hypobronchial eminence. Anterior part of hypobronchial eminence is known as cupula, and posterior part is unnamed, and this is root of tongue, attached part. So anterior two-third is derived by the two lateral lingual swelling from the first arch. Posterior one-third is from the cranial part of hypobronchial eminence, and extrinsic and intrinsic muscles of tongue, they develop from the occipital myotomes. So sensory supply we have discussed. So as concerned with the development, sensory supply will be different for the anterior two-third and posterior one-third. Anterior two-third, it has general sensations, they are carried by the lingual nerve. Taste sensations, they are carried by chorda tympani. But taste and general sensations for posterior one-third is by glossopharyngeal nerve, as it is derived from the third arch, and posterior most it is from the vagus nerve, as it is derived from the fourth arch. Just for the anterior two-third, it is different. General by the lingual nerve, and taste sensations is by the chorda tympani branch of facial nerve. So formation of germ layers. So this is two cell stage. You're all clear with the fertilization, as the sperms fuses with the ova. It leads to the cell stage. First is two cell stage. It divides to 4. Then it forms 16 cell stage known as morula. Now there is differentiation within the morula. Morula, the cells, they get attached to one side to form inner cell mass. Now this is same diagram. Now here differentiation takes place. The inner cell mass, the cells, they get attached to one side, remaining the cavity. This cavity is known as a cavity of blastocyst. And this cells, they get clumped to one side to form inner cell mass. Now this is trophoblast, single layer surrounding the cavity, blastocystic cavity. Now the differentiation takes place in inner cell mass. The cells, they arrange in two layers. Look, here the inner cell mass is differentiating in two layers. Upper layer, the cells, they become columnar. Lower layer, the cells, they become cuboidal. Upper columnar cells, they will form ectoderm. Lower columnar cells, they will form endoderm. This is epiblast. This is hypoblast. Lower endodermal cells. This whole is primitive yolk sac. This is amniotic cavity. So inner cell mass, it is separating the trophoblast from by a cavity known as amniotic cavity. So this is primary yolk sac. We won't be discussing with all these layers because these are the layers of placenta. Now coming to this diagram. Now this is cranial end of the embryonic disc, this is caudal end, this is amniotic cavity, this is yolk sac. Now some of the cells of the endoderm, they get enlarged to form precaudal plate. Some of the cuboidal cells, they get enlarged towards the cranial end to form precaudal plate. Whereas now some cells, they differentiate and they merge, or they get differentiated between the two layers of the ectoderm and endoderm, forming mesoderm. Now these are the invaginating mesodermal cells which will be leading to the formation of third layer. So this is epiblast, ectoderm. This is cuboidal cells, which is future endoderm. Now this is invaginating mesodermal cells. This is your yolk sac. Now this is development of notochord. On either sides of the notochord, you have extraembryonic mesoderm. This is the formation of neural plate or neural groove. Notochord remains of notochord. It will form a nucleus pulposus, which is the central gelatinous part of the intervertebral disc. That is your main intervertebral disc is between the two vertebrae. The central part is soft gelatinous, which is remnant of notochord. Second, it will form the apical ligament. Third, it is incorporated in base occiput, the lower part of the base of skull, and base sphenoid. Now, the future developing of the neural plate. As the neural groove, first there is a depression in the ectoderm, which is neural groove. It is surrounded by the fold of the membrane, forming the neural folds. As soon as the neural groove, it becomes deepened, neural folds, they approach each other. They come closer and they're separated from the surface ectoderm. So this opening becomes circular and it is separated from the surface ectoderm. So some of the cells of the ectoderm, they will migrate to form neural crest cells. Remaining, they will enclose a circular canal which will form the neural tube. Now this neural tube, it elongates from the cervical to the sacral region. Upper elongated part will form the future CNS and lower elongated tubular part will form the spinal cord. This is notochord. These are the neural crest cells which will be giving origin to different cells. So neural crest cell, it gave rise to the Schwann cells, sympathetic ganglionic cells, arachnoid cells, spial cells, mesenchyme, melanopore, then neurolimal shells, that is Schwann cells, chromaffin cells, sympathetic ganglionic cells. So these are the derivatives of neural crest cells. It is very important. This is another diagram, that is ectodermal thickening. It thickens to form a neural groove. Neural groove, it is guarded on either sides by the neural folds. As soon as folds, they come closer, approach each other, they form a tubular opening and they get detached from the ectoderm. Some of the cells, they get migrate to form neural crest cells. Remaining cells, they will enclose a neural tube which elongates from the cervical to the sacral part. Just behind the neural tube, you have, this is notochord, which is surrounded by the extraembryonic mesoderm, and it has somites. These are the somites, which will further differentiate into dermatome, sclerotome, and myotome. This is same again diagram with complete. Above you have amniotic cavity, ectoderm, then red colored mesoderm, and this is endoderm lining the primitive yolk sac. Now ectodermal thickening is there to form neural groove. The neural groove deepens, enclosed by the neural folds, and folds, they get closer to each other. Now this neural tube, it is separated from the ectoderm to form a proper circular neural tube or neural canal, which is circular and it extends from the cervical to the sacral part. The cranial most part will form the future CNS and derived Tubular part, it will form the future spinal cord. This is black color is your notochord, which is future nucleus pulposus. This is another diagram. These are the diagrams. I am going to tell you about the derivatives of the germ layers. It is very important. Please go through these derivatives. Ectoderm will be giving rise to the lining epithelium of all the ectodermal structures. Please go through skin, lips, cheeks, floor of mouth, palate, nasal cavity, lower part of anal canal, terminal part of male urethra, labia minora, labia majora, epithelium of eye, that is cornea, conjunctiva, ciliary body, iris, ear, tympanic cavity, tympanic membrane, and membranous labyrinth. So it will be forming the glands, that is exocrine sweat gland, sebaceous glands, parotid, mammary, lacrimal gland. So from the ectodermal thickenings, it will be giving origin to the hair, nails, enamel of teeth, lens of eye, musculature of iris, and the nervous system, which is ectodermal in its origin. Now, fate of mesoderm, all the connective tissue, tendon, aponeurosis, superficial fascia, deep fascia, adipose, reticular tissue, cartilage, bone, all the muscles except the musculature of iris, they are mesodermal in its origin. Heart with blood vessels, lymphatics, kidney, trigone of urinary bladder, prostatic gland, female reproductive system, male reproductive system, cavities, pleural, pericardial, peritoneal cavities, mesothelium of Bursey joints, sclera, cornea, choroid, ciliary body, iris. Their substance, they are derived from mesoderm. Endoderm, it will be lining the mouth, palate, remaining soft organs, gallbladder, respiratory, pancreatic, urinary bladder except the trigone, which is present in the posterior ball. Greater part of vagina, inner surface of labia minora, male urethra except the prostatic part, respiratory tract, middle ear, mastoid antrum, air cells, and all the GIT, except the lower part of anal canal. They are lined by the endoderm. Along with that, the important glands, thyroid, parathyroid, thymus, islets of Langerhans, then exocrine glands, liver, pancreas, glands in GIT, female glands, and prostatic glands. All they are endodermal in its origin. So this is fate of germ layers. It is very important, and fate of your neural crest cells. So next part is, so I guess that's all about general embryology and osteology part. Next, we will be discussing with the muscles and the joint. So that's all for today's class.